and how technology is playing a key role. I would like to invite the speaker on stage, Mr. Sathish Padmanathan from Tietoevry. Mr. Sathish, please. He is Head of Product Engineering, Payment and Messaging, Tietoevry. Over to you. The stage is yours. Yeah.
Do we have a presentation?
Presentation, this is the one.
Wonderful. Yeah.
This is your presentation? PDF?
Yes.
Second why isn't? It's there. Yeah?
Wonderful.
This is the clip.
Good afternoon. I'm very glad to be here talking about a very interesting topic. It's also an interesting hour of the day. We're just about to, get into lunch in some time, but I'll try to make it very interesting and very short. When I got this topic from NASSCOM, I was trying to really wonder about the word deciphering, right? I mean, I want to confess, I kind of went into my dictionary to look at what it is, because I intend to make it very simple, easy for everyone to understand. And when I looked at the dictionary, that's what it said. It's kind of decoding and making it simple. So I'll try to make it very simple for all of us to understand. So this will certainly not be a masterclass. I'm here to share what I know and our experience working with some central banks in Europe on their digital currency pilot and different programs. Yeah. So without taking much time, I'll actually go into the topic. We will start with understanding how money is created. Again, making it very simple for all of us to understand. Yeah. So money is generally created in two ways. 3% of the money is created by central banks. They mint and print money, right? I mean, we have coins, we have a currency that goes into the distribution, into the ecosystem, right? And the second way of money creation, it's about 97% by banks extending loans, credit to businesses for personal use, and then that comes back into the system through interest and repayment, yeah? So this is how money is created today. What we're going to focus on the first 3% of how money is created today, and what is the alternative, what is the future of cash, which we call as cash 2.0, yeah? I also have a bit of a picture to show how money flows into the system and how it comes back into the system. So up here you see the central bank prints cash, mints coins, and then that goes into the economy for usage, right? I mean, through banks or through different channels. And then you also have the commercial banks, which kind of extends credit, loans to different businesses, individuals, and then that comes back as loan repayment with interest, right? You kind of add the money which was created. But recently, the past few years, we've also seen government inducing a lot of stimulus into the economy. We've seen COVID taking a hit on businesses. So governments has introduced trillions of dollars the last couple of years to kind of keep up the economy back rolling. So this is how money is created, yeah. And then if I kind of also go into types of money, not all money is the same. They're very different, right? And there's a small picture of showing how different they are. So central bank money, which is the most stable, it is kind of the claim, the liability is on the central bank, which is basically backed by the government. So something that we can all trust, right? The second type of money is money from the commercial banks, right? I mean, you have money in your account, in your wallet, and so on. And then we also have e-money, like your Paytms, your Airtel money, like the Oyster in UK, PayPal in US, and so on, right? What is not money is something very important for us to understand, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about, digital currencies supported by central bank. Public cryptocurrency is not money, right? I mean, early today, we had some speakers talk about NFTs, right? So digital currencies which are not supported by central banks are not money, and they're not stable at all, right? And then there are some stable coins like Facebook. In the past, they came up with something called this Dime, but then now they've decided to kind of close that program because it's not working for them. So we now understand what is actual money, different types of money, and what is not money. And then if I go into the money flower, I mean, this is, again, a very popular picture most of you should have actually seen. There are four very popular categories, in the money flower. One, the accessibility, what form of money we have, digital, physical, who is issuing the money, and how do you transact? It's like peer-to-peer, business-to-business, business-to-consumers, and so on, right? And then in here, we're going to focus on three important things which is of our interest. Number one, which is, Number one, which is cash, paper, coins, which is funded, or which is kind of, the claim is towards a central bank, right, that you see in here. And then retail CBDCs, which is value-based, which is more like, a token-based. You don't really have an account to track it. And then retail CBDCs, which is account-based, which is very similar to your banking checking account or the saving account, right? The reason I want to show you this picture is because it's very important to understand when we talk about CBDCs, the different type of CBDCs and what it really means, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk in my next slide. Okay, let's kind of start about why do we need a digital cash? Okay, people can talk about we have financial inclusion is much better in today's world. People are using accounts, but why digital cash, right? Different central banks in different parts of the world have different problems. For example, if you talk about India, right, I mean, we still have 50% cash usage. And for the central bank to print cash and mint currency, it's a lot of money, right? For example, we still import the ink needed to print our currency, right? The metal needed to mint our coins. Not that it would kind of, heavily impact our current account deficit because we are importing, but still it has a larger impact. I mean, for example, India wants to reduce the usage of paper cash or coins, right? If you look at Europe, they have a different problem. There's very little use of money, right? And then they want to kind of somehow still have some liquid cash in the market and not just in accounts, because they also have different problems, because not everyone has an account in some part of the Western world as well. For example, people who have immigrated, refugees, migrants. So there are different problems to solve in Europe, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk in here. You look at the cash usage. Norway is the one which uses least cash, 3%. In India, cash is still king at 50% of our usage. Of course, it has changed a lot in the last 2 years, after the demonetization, during the pandemic, but it's still one of the highest in the world. Again, there are still some countries like China and US which are still using a lot of cash, but kind of we lead the way with 50%, right? And that's when I said the central bank wants to reduce the usage of cash. Okay, not if all through the accounts. It needs a different channel where they can, have free flow of cash, but in a digital way, yeah. I kind of briefly touched upon this. I also did not cover some points in here. Like I said, in Europe, some kind of countries want to address the decline of cash, right? I mean, because they have different problems today. And then it is also about, in a way, take back some control in the monetary policy. Today, some of the central banks feel that with a lot of stable coins in the market, with PayPal, with challenger banks coming in, they're losing control over the cash circulation in the market, right? So it's also going to be a struggle between the central banks and the commercial banks, because some of the banks that we have spoken to in the past 2 years, they're not very inviting to this idea of digital currency. They feel that their dominance will somehow, be reduced, because when coins supported by the central banks come in, probably it's going to kind of increase the circulation of digital coins, because it's very easy. You don't have to probably carry a lot of cash in your wallet. You don't have to really withdraw money from the ATM. You can just use it as tokens, right? So it's also another dimension of financial inclusion. Like I said, India, the financial inclusion has improved, but there are still countries like Africa where there are still a lot of people which are not in the banking ecosystem, right? So in a way, digital currencies from central bank will also bank the unbanked, right? Of course, there are multiple reasons for people not to be in the banking ecosystem. Like I said, okay, someone which have just migrated out of a warred country, they don't have the needed documents to kind of open a bank account. For example, Ukraine. A lot of refugees have come out of Ukraine to different European countries, right? And it's a real challenge today. They don't have cash. They don't have cards to buy something. So it's going to solve problems like this, like a central bank digital currency. You can just go and, buy it online, with whatever you have, right? I mean, you can just go into a retail shop, buy some digital coins into your wallet. So it's going to be very easy. So, and that's the financial inclusion that I want to cover. And then central banks also wants to kind of, in a way, reestablish. Okay, today none of us bank with the central bank directly. You always need an intermediary bank or the commercial banks. So they want to kind of, open direct channels with the consumers. Like all of us, who kind of want a bank account, right? I mean, you can directly have channels with the central banks to kind of buy digital currency and also probably, exchange digital currency for actual currency. Yeah. And then, yeah, now I want to kind of cover about the status of digital currencies around the world. It's very interesting to see that about 90% of the central banks are already pursuing on digital currencies. This includes 60% that are experimenting with the technology, what kind of framework they want to use, 14% which are already in the pilot phase. And this picture, it's not, okay, it's very clear there. You see, India is still in the experimenting phase, and then I'm also going to show a timeline to kind of see where different countries are. But China is already in the pilot, and US is also very close to starting a pilot on digital currencies. Yeah, I think. Sweden was the first one to start a pilot on digital currency. They started in 2019, which we were also part of. US started it in 2021, but it's not moving very fast because US, as we all know, is not so modern in their banking ecosystem. Europe is also planning for a digital euro. The pilot has started, but they have not progressed much because the pandemic has slowed them down a bit. India, by 2023, we will start the pilot, and there are also other countries which are exploring on how to start the pilot. As we speak, a lot of central banks have issued RFIs and RFPs, inviting companies to kind of come and consult them on how to decide and how to build their digital currency framework. Yeah. I want to now talk about the e-krona project we did with the Swedish Central Bank. So there were different technology companies which was part of the e-krona pilot, and we are one of those helping the Swedish Central Bank in designing their digital currency platform. So before we actually go into the actual e-krona pilot, I also want to show the design choices which is needed for any central bank to kind of decide on what technology they need, or what is the framework they want to design. So there are different factors like, do you need a interest-bearing digital coin? For example, today, if you have cash in your wallet, it's not earning you interest, right? Only when you have money in your account that earn you interest. So there are choices to make here. Some central banks, if they want to reduce the usage of cash, they may as well, have some interest to motivate people to move away from physical cash, physical coins into the digital currency. So that's very important, right? I mean, you need a technology which would, make it very flexible for you. For example, some central banks can start with, okay, interest on your digital currency, and after the adoption has come up well, they can kind of, in a way, change that, okay, yeah, now they are no more interest bearing, right? So, and then the asset class is also important. What kind of currencies do you want to hold? Are you going to give it to corporates, or is it just for retail? What kind of technology are you going to have? Will it be token-based? will it be account-based? Because if it's account-based, there's no difference between your bank account and your digital currency, right? Because there are something related to privacy and other things to take care of. For example, if you're a tourist, you're going to be in a country for 2 months, you can't really, open a bank account. It's the same for, opening a digital currency account as well. So a lot of banks are actually thinking about, okay, should we have account-based or a token-based, right? And then there's also how do we distribute? Can it be directly distributed from the central banks to the consumers, like all of us, or should it be through the commercial banks, like how they distribute cash today? And there is also a thinking of, can we have another dimension? Should it just be the commercial banks which redistribute digital currency, or can it also be, for example, the PSPs, companies like Paytm, companies like Zettel, Amazon? So a lot of central banks are thinking also in that direction. Distribution of digital currency is very important factor in succeeding with this concept, right? And now I go back into the e-krona pilot which we did with the Swedish Central Bank. I'm not going to go into the details of it. I'm not going to touch the key technology or architecture, but it will be on a very high level, right? So before we go into that, we will also talk about how is cash distributed, right? I mean, central banks, distribute cash to the commercial banks, and then from commercial banks, it kind of comes to the consumers, right? There's no other way. Of course, there are ways like, for example, in India, you have a lot of subsidy, right? I mean, people don't, or at least today, they need a bank account. But in the past, at least, you don't need a bank account for you to receive a subsidy. For example, you're a Manrega worker, right? Even if you don't have a bank account, you're going to be paid in cash, right? So cash is not just distributed through commercial banks today, it is also distributed to other channels, right? Which is also a very key consideration for a framework like digital currency from the central bank, because you can then start issuing digital currencies. I'll also show you how a digital currency would look like in real life. For example, China has come a long way in their pilot, right? And then this is example of a very high-level CBDC framework, and which we designed for the Swedish Central Bank. So you have the central bank which kind of mints the digital currencies, and then they distribute it to the commercial banks, and then the commercial banks can issue those digital currencies to the end users, right? And I'll also show you an architecture of how that would actually happen in practice. Like I said, a lot of central banks are also interested in opening up more channels to distribute the digital currencies. For example, it can be through the commercial banks, it can be through PSPs like Paytm, Google Pay. It can also be through government, paying subsidies and social security benefits directly to the end users, right? And there is also a discussion in at least some geography. How can we have cross-border payments implemented through central bank digital currencies? For example, in a country like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they're very close. They all trade in krona, and their value is almost the same, right? So they're also looking at option of how do we create a digital currency framework which would help cross-border payments as well, right? Okay, if you have a kind of e-krona from Sweden, you would still be able to trade that or use that in Denmark, to buy something, right? So that's also a new dimension that has come up. And this is more like the suggested architecture for the Swedish Central Bank, how they plan to distribute the digital currency. The first is indirect. It goes through the banks. As you see, central bank is in here, and then you have like Bank X and Bank Y, which are commercial banks, and then they in turn distribute it to their end users. A direct central bank digital currency is directly issued by the central bank to the end customers. And there is also an hybrid model where you have a possibility of either buying it directly from the central bank or from a commercial bank. And here is where the marketplace will eat up, because some commercial banks make kind of, have a lot of motivating factors like rewards, having some discounts. For example, if you have like 1 rupee, you get 1.5 digital currency. So I think when this comes in, the hybrid model will be very interesting to watch out. We already discussed about the design choices, and this is some example of how digital currencies would look like. This picture is from China, from their pilot. As you see, you have, you have a card which kind of holds actual digital currency, which can be punched as you use. You have more like a chip-based, where you can load your digital currencies and just go tap it in any of the retailers, or you will have something very similar to a credit card, but it doesn't have to be cleared through a network, which has a lot of fees like interchange and conversion. I think China has come a long way, and looks like the adoption is also growing even in the pilot phase. So it'll be very interesting to see how it happens in India. And we also, in Tietoevry, have a sandbox which is ready, which can work for any central bank around the world if they want to, in a way, start a pilot or at least want a demo. I'm not going into the details because I think the time is already running. The timeline of e-Krona project, it started in 2016, and Tietoevry, we were invited into the phase 2 of the pilot, and we tried to build exactly this for the Swedish Central Bank, where we have all our product portfolio from payment to core to loans, and then we created an ecosystem where the banks, commercial banks, can actually provide a facility where you can transfer your physical cash to a digital cash. And it's the same for central bank. They can provide interfaces where a consumer can actually buy a digital currency by using actual currency, your account or your cash and so on. Yeah. And for this pilot, we used Hyperledger Fabric as the technology. Yeah. I have more slides, but the benefit of time, I'm taking a pause here. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take. Yes, please.
Hi, so this is Madhu from Amdocs. So earlier you mentioned about cashless economies, that how India is at 50%. So even today, like some of the established companies or educational institutes, for example, because I had that incident recently, where I have to pay a certain amount to a big institute in India. And they gave me two options, that if you pay online, it should be with GST. And if you can bring cash to a certain place, then you don't have to pay GST. So when these kind of instances happen, so like it was not expected, first of all, because such a reputed organization, they have all the register compliance, So how can, because on one side we're talking about, cashless economies, and and on the other side there are some instances, not only education institute, but if you see, go to hotels, or if you book a Uber also, they sometimes say that you cancel from there and you pay as cash, so that you don't have to pay that extra. So I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. Like one of the motivations for central banks to bring in digital currency is exactly the same reason. They kind of want to get rid of cash. It's not possible because not everyone is into the banking ecosystem, but they can, with a digital currency, you can be very flexible. Like if you have a token-based digital currency, it'll be very hard for anyone to track. It kind of gives confidence for people to kind of use it, but at the same time, at some point, you can have a lot of controls in place. For example, you can tax digital currencies beyond a limit, right? I mean, you can actually track when there is a lot of, for example, if there is a suspected transaction, you can really put some control. So that's exactly the reason some countries, including India, want to come up with a digital currency that will be an alternative of cash, which would still serve the purpose of cash as it serves today. Yeah.
Because in this scenario, two things are happening. First, you are promoting cash, and suddenly there's a amount of tax invasion. Okay, if I want to save tax, and that won't be much, because now it is like I'm being punished for doing cashless payment online.
Yeah, I think it's the same, not just in India. Even in UK, the taxation is very different, right? I mean, they don't pay income tax on income, but corporates pay tax on the transaction, right? So a lot of, if you have a cash and carry kind of a thing, you get discounts, right? Because, it's very open in the UK. So it's the same in every market, and that's exactly the reason why a lot of central banks want to create a cash alternative, which after some extent, they can add controls that can be traceable, that can be easily, you can have a lot of flexibility in terms of taxation, in terms of fraud prevention, in terms of what you just mentioned. If there is an evasion, you can really track that at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question. No. I'm going to be here throughout the day, so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to have a chat. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Satish, for being with us here and sharing your views. It was a really wonderful session. And as a small token of gesture from NASSCOM, I'd like to give you this certificate of
Thank you.
sampling that we have planted.
Thank you so much. Sure.
So we break here for lunch and networking. And the next session starts at 1:40. Hope to see you all again in the room. Thank you so much.